So welcome everyone to our Wednesday weekly Lunch and Learn. Michelle and I are excited to switch it up with you this week and to take a more personal approach to our personal development, where we're so often talking about our professional development. Today we're going to talk about the 4 agreements and overcoming self-imposed limitations, right? Because they're all self-imposed when it all comes down to it. So we're going to talk about the power of these 4 agreements and expand them beyond what's in this book into our lives, and have a discussion around how we can apply the knowledge from this great book that Michelle and I both just loved reading, and how we can expand that knowledge into our lives. So I'm going to give it to Michelle to take it away from here and get us started.
Awesome. So do we have the PowerPoint up?
Yes. So I'll go ahead. I'm
see it. Okay.
I'm launching that right now.
Cool. All right. So welcome, ladies. And I don't know that I see any masculine names, so I think it's just a forum of us gals. So as Amber referenced, I remember the first time I actually had an opportunity to see Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of the 4 Agreements. This goes back probably 30-something years ago, as I was on this quest to really practice more of my spirituality and gain a better understanding of who I am, being this spiritual being, having this human experience. And I remember going to a forum that he was speaking. This was right as I think the book had been published. And he spoke to, and it's even referenced in the book for those of you who have read it, that we are living in this world an illusion. This is a dream. And the purpose of his book with these very basic fundamental agreements is to help us uncover the dreamlike state, or what we've been conditioned to believe in, hence our limiting beliefs, to Amber's point, and how with these 4 agreements, we can begin to live a more enlightened life. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I really love this quote. I'm going to read it, although I'm sure you guys can read along with it, because it's really intended to sort of establish the foundation for what the 4 agreements can do in our lives. Everything we do is based on agreements. We have made agreements with ourselves, with other people, and with God, with life. But the most important agreement are the ones we make with ourselves. In these agreements, we tell ourselves who we are, how we are to behave, what's possible, what's impossible. One of the single agreement is not such a problem, but we have many agreements that come from fear. They deplete our energy and diminish our self-worth. So this next 45 to 50 minutes, ladies, is really intended to be a bit of a wake-up call, a jolt to our souls, to have us be reminded of who we are, how we were created to live a happy, fulfilling, satisfying life, creating possibilities. We are co-creating with our thoughts. And this is really, for the next 45 minutes, a journey that we want to kind of take you through. So our mission is to overcome these limited beliefs that we inherited since childhood. Interestingly enough, society, it's kind of, nurture and nature, has taught us to be a certain way. And they're calling this, or at least in the book, he's referencing it as the domestication of humans. Because as little children, we are born with the nature of being just pure love and happiness, exploring life and enjoying life, and really being completely authentic. But then we learn by response to society, authority figures, parents in some instances, to be what others think we should be, because it's not okay for us to be who we are. That's where sort of the judgment starts to take hold. We start pretending to be what we're not. This is a bit of the imposter syndrome, if any of you have read that book. So by the time we're teenagers, when we get into peer pressure, when we get into groupthink, there we go. We then learn to take what society has told us we should be, and now we're internalizing those voices, and now we're judging ourselves, we're punishing ourselves, and then oftentimes we're rewarding ourselves according to those agreements that we never chose to from the beginning. So all of our normal and natural tendencies are lost in the process of domestication. And we begin to search for what we have lost. We search for the freedom because we're no longer free. We search for the happiness because we're really no longer happy at a very deep-rooted level. We search for the beauty because we're no longer believing that we're beautiful, and we're searching for our truest self. So with the practice of the four agreements, we're going to help uncover our authentic self. And it's going to be the greatest gift that we can give ourselves, because when we can accept who we are fundamentally at the core, we then are permission giving, because the judgment diminishes and decreases. And now we're able to see our brothers and our sisters through the same lenses that we see ourselves. And that is flawless. Next slide. Okay, take it away. You want to take them through agreement number 1?
Yes, great. Okay. So being impeccable with your word. I remember when I read the book for the first time and thought about this, and I come from the Church of Unity. It's a non-denominational church, and I remember the stories of the power of I am when I was a child, and how important your I am is and what follows that. And when I read the Four Agreements, that immediately brought me to that I am. Speaking with integrity is a part of being impeccable with your words. Only saying what you mean, avoiding speaking against yourself or gossiping about others, and speaking the truth. So let's look at these: speaking with truth and love. Speaking with integrity and the power of your word. Whatever follows your I am will eventually follow you. That's one of my favorite quotes, because we get to choose what follows our I am. When we tell ourselves who we are, we start to believe ourselves. A belief is just a thought that's thought over and over and over again. When we tell others who we are, we believe ourselves. And so when you're saying, if you do something and you mess up and you say, I'm so stupid, God, I'm so retarded, why did I do that? Or I'm so, these terrible things that come out after I am, that if we're not thinking about it intentionally, you think, oh, that's just, it doesn't really matter, but it does. It really does matter what comes after your I am. This is a great lesson to teach to ourselves and also to children. I remember growing up, my mom never let me say, like, I am stupid. Like, I'd be like, oh, I'm so stupid. And she'd be like, don't say that. And I didn't get how important it was until I got older and recognized that there, have so many of us, if you've ever had that friend that is just wonderful, and you think the most of him or her, and then you hear them talk about themselves, and you're like, God, how can you say that? How can you believe that? That's their mind chatter, or the monkey mind, as we call it in psychology. Continuing to getting in a pathway, getting in a habit of saying negative things to yourself, and that is just one of the most damaging things that we can do. So when you look at being impeccable with your word, the most important way that you can do that is by recognizing what comes after your I am, and then also letting go of self-judgment and blame. It's one thing to take ownership for what it is that we do, but to continue to judge yourself and not forgive yourself for mistakes that you've made in the past or other people it's like drinking poison. It's like you're continuing to tell yourself that same story over and over again that's not serving you. And so when you are impeccable with your word, you have to be intentional about letting go of self-judgment and practicing self-acceptance. I did that. I was that person, but I'm not going to accept the shame in my past, because from here on out, I can make different decisions. I can be more impeccable with my word. I can be more intentional with the way I'm showing up, with what I'm saying. And I can stop not only blaming myself, but also blaming others. Let it go, and then figure out what I'm going to focus on next. Because ultimately, we can create the most beautiful dream, or we can destroy everything around us with just our word. The lens, as Michelle spoke about, the lens that we're looking through is is so important. You know, it's sometimes we have to take a step back to reset, especially when we're depleted, especially when everybody around us is negative and we hear those stories and we start repeating those same stories. We got to take a step. That's like if you got on really nice sunglasses, your lenses are dirty. Take them off. Take a second to replenish, to cleanse your lenses, to have a moment of gratitude and look at what is good in life and what focus on what you want and not just what you don't want, and to aim your word in the direction that you want your life to go in, because you really do have that power to create your most beautiful dream. And it doesn't just happen overnight, but it's something that with great practice and intention, as you adopt it into your life, this is why I love this book, The Four Agreements. It's transformational. Just that one agreement there, and we got three more to go. So I'm going to pass it back over to Michelle. But I'm checking to see if anyone had any comments or questions as we are going. Michelle says we are claiming who we are with whatever follows. I am. Yes, Michelle. I'll let you take it from here with that with that comment.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh,
Well said. Yes. You want to read this?
I forgot to read this quote, but you want to read it?
Sure, sure. Death is not the biggest fear we have. Our biggest fear is taking the risk to be alive, the risk to be alive and express who and what we really are. So there's one point before we go into agreement number 2 that I want to also underscore, given what Amber just shared. And we're not only intentional about being impeccable with our word in how we speak about ourselves following the I am statement. One of the things that we really want to express in this call and just be permission giving is, if we believe from a spiritual perspective that we are all one, even how we speak about other people, even people who we may not agree with, it may be our government, politicians, our coworker, our boss, whoever, be impeccable with your word is recognizing gossiping and talking disparagingly against someone else is honestly speaking more about who you are and less about who they are. So being impeccable is, as Michelle Obama speaks to, even if people are going low, we go high. Okay. Next agreement.
Yes, Michelle, we forgot to read the results of the poll. So I'm actually going to stop here just to give us our results. Or should we say that? We can say that for the end in our discussion.
It's up to you.
Yeah, we'll save it for the end. Let's just flow, and then we'll give. So if you haven't taken the poll yet and you still like to, go ahead and take the poll of the 4 questions that we have for you.
Yeah, okay, it's our intention at the end, because we want to make this interactive and participatory to some extent. So yeah, we want to hear from you how you may be rating yourselves in terms of the 4 agreements. Okay, agreement number 2, don't take things personally. That is the quintessential role that oftentimes our ego plays on us, right? Nothing others do is because of you. What others do is a projection of their own reality. Even when we have a projection or a perception of others, it's really speaking to what point of view or what lens we're seeing things through. When you stop worrying about their opinions and actions, you actually stop being a victim to needless pain. All right, so let's bring this home. We are story-making machines. What I mean by that is, by nature of our inherent human nature, 9 times out of 10, I don't care whether we're standing on a platform waiting for a train, we're judging whether or not what MTA is on time. I don't understand why they just can't seem to get the schedule together. We may be standing on a line at Starbucks and we don't understand why the person in front of us is taking so long to order their mocha latte. We are story-making machines and we give things meaning. And oftentimes when there's a behavior that's somewhat unfavorable against us, we take that personally. Why? Because we are carefully trained and taught that somehow other people's opinion of us matters more than our opinion of ourselves. I tell my clients consistently, other people's opinion of you is none of your business, okay? Now, this is not to say that oftentimes feedback is not important to our growth, but the only thing we are responsible for is our intention. And oftentimes, you know, people may say things to us that hurt our feelings, but it's honestly, Nico, a little deeper than what we can cover on today's call. Take what that feedback or constructive criticism might be, if it resonates with us, and discard the rest. Can you go to the next slide? I think that's going to be the video because I really want to show this one. There we go. Okay, let me set the stage here. I was doing an emotional intelligence workshop many years ago on, and I found this video. It's a cute video, and I don't know if anybody even knows who these twins are, but it's very brief, and it's illustrating how society and then oftentimes parents or authority start to begin to teach us that we are responsible for other people's feelings. Go ahead, you want to show it? Great.
He want to hold your hand, Juicy. My Johnny, you hurt his feelings. Go back up there with him. All right. All right. Yay. Now give him a hug.
Okay, thanks, Amber. This is an incredible illustration of how, with the best of intentions, we are taught that we are responsible. Now, to distill down the interpretation of this video, you have two adorable twins, brothers. One is adventurous and wants to jump off by himself. The other one wants to hold hands. The adventurous one jumps off the step, is so excited, looks back, sees his brother crying, is completely clueless, looks over at his mother, and the mother says, "You hurt his feelings." He looks puzzled because all he did was jump off his step. The mother then is encouraging him, go back up, hold his hand, they jump off, and then the mother says, "Good boy." This is how we are taught to take responsibility for whatever behavior or actions that we have and what the interpretation or the responses that other people have. And this agreement really is intended to get us re-present with whatever people are doing behaviorally towards us. They are being and doing the best that they know how to be and do, and it's only our interpretation of their behavior that wounds us. The act in and of itself does not hurt us. We are powerful, but only to a certain point. We don't have really the ability to hurt other people's feelings, and I know that that may be a foreign concept, nor does anyone really have the ability to hurt our feelings. It's how we're interpreting behaviors and actions, and how we're, again, interpreting and perceiving that we're hurting our own feelings. So our hope is that that video, you know, very simplistically brings to life how we're very carefully taught that, you know, if we say no when someone wants us to say yes, that somehow, you know, we are hurting someone else's feelings. To stay powerful, it's own our own and don't take things personally that people say or do to us. Next slide. Okay, so that related quote here by Don says, "When you make it a strong habit to not take anything personally, you avoid many upsets in your life. Your anger, your jealousy, and your envy will disappear, and even your sadness will simply disappear." One other point I want to make before we go to agreement number 4, and this is another example. Think about, you know, I use this a lot in the trainings that I do. You know, you're traveling when we were on our way to work, as an example, and you're late for work, maybe your alarm clock didn't go off, and you get in the car and you're racing to work, you're in the left lane, or maybe even in the middle lane, using that as an example, and someone cuts in front of you, almost causing you to get into an accident just so that they can get off the exit because they almost missed it. How many times, given the thoughts, do we get so angry? This is what road rage is all about. We may have, we may even speak in our car some damaging words about that person, what an AH they are, or what the hell they could have killed people. It's a story that we're telling ourselves, and we're taking personally the fact that someone may be irresponsible in the way that they're driving. But what if we suspend our judgment, learn how to be objective, because we don't know. That person literally could have gotten a call that their 3-year-old just got taken to the hospital. So oftentimes what causes us anger and upset is because we think someone may be doing something deliberate to us when in fact they're just behaving in a particular way. So we just want to illustrate those 2 examples to try to drive home the point that we can really elevate happiness and satisfaction and really disappear sadness and jealousy when we recognize not to take things personally. Cool. Take it away, Amber.
Yeah, so major, and we actually have quite a few comments in the chat, so I think this might be a good time to take a break and just address some of the comments. So I'm going to stop the share for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we can see you guys. So I'll go over the last 2 agreements and what your answers were. When in the poll, when we ask you on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being the least, 5 being the most, how impeccable are you with your word? 1% of you said 2, you gave yourselves a 2. I'm sorry, 8% of you gave yourselves a 2, 38% of you gave yourselves a 3, 46% of you gave yourselves a 4, and 1% of you gave yourself a 5. When it comes to how often do you take things personally, the same 0 to 5 scale, we have 15% of you gave yourself a 2. So you don't take things personally too often. 54% of you gave yourselves a 3. 31% of you gave yourselves a 4. You take things personally pretty often. I guess that would be in 5. So none of you take things personally all the time. And so thank you for answering those poll questions. And I'm going to read a couple of the comments in the chat and also invite you, those of you who made comments, if you want to turn your mic on and actually make your statement out loud or comment on your comment, we welcome you to hop in here too. So Renette said,
Desi, go for it, love.
I didn't know if you were going to read first or if you wanted the person to chime
go
in.
ahead. Yeah, I was only going to read to prompt you, but you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I was just saying that I think I completely agree that, all things being equal, that people come to the table with a lived experience, and so that lived experience informs the way that people behave with you. And so if I'm having personal interactions with people and they seem to act out of pocket, I know well enough to know that that doesn't have anything to do with me, especially if I'm moving through with the best of intentions. But as we have seen over and over again, and as of the last 2 days, that balances of privilege and power and race and gender and all of those things have a very significant effect on the ways in which you are affected personally. And so I would be remiss to not say that the situations that I have seen as of late in terms of murder and enacting fragility to employ police to inflict harm and violence on a Black man is, you cannot take that personally. I know it doesn't have anything personally to do with me, but it has a very specific effect on how I inform and educate my community about how to move through the world. So I think it's very difficult to strike a balance between saying, oh, I'm going to let that roll off my back because I know that has nothing to do with me, and know that I can, be at the intersection of real harm if I don't take seriously someone else's issue with me.
Okay, so, and you're absolutely right. We're not at all discounting. There's on the continuum of how to be impacted by certainly these recent occurrences. to your point, we don't want to become so apathetic to where people's selfish, egregious, bias actions don't impact us, right? Because we are feeling, caring people, and it matters, right? It matters. And yet, what we're talking about is with whatever actions may be taken towards us personally or what we may witness in terms of social interactions, what we want to do is become neutral only to the point where we may take action, right? Be social activists. Maybe it's a wake-up call for, people who are not people of color to say, you know what, this is egregious, and now I'm going to begin to act in a more favorable, non-biased way. Or if we are people of color, what is it that I need to do to raise the level of social awareness so these things happen fewer? It's when we don't take it personally to the point where it starts to poke at us and make us angry and it steals our joy, that's what this agreement is really speaking to. When it gets to the point where we are taking an action or a behavior, interpreting it in a way that it hurts us and creates pain, that is the adjustment that we want to make. Does that make sense, Desi?
It does make sense. It's work.
This is what we're here to do. This is what we're here to do. We're here to flex a muscle, to not lose our humanity, and to stay empathetic to a point and not apathetic. But it's a muscle because we are spiritual beings having human experiences, and we get a choice to how we want to react to when things happen, either to us or what we're observing. We get to choose how do we want to respond. Does anybody else have?
Yeah, I'd like to invite Maya to turn her microphone on if she'd like. She's made a couple of comments in response to Desi. Maya, are you with us? There you are. Did you?
You're getting me in trouble, Amber.
Right, I'm sorry. Okay.
Get my... No, I was kidding. One, Daisy, I just want to say beautifully articulated, and that I think is so much of the trouble. Michelle, hi. Amber, hi. I want to say that storytelling piece, I was at a grief counseling training years ago, and one of the most important lessons I took away from that was the stories we tell ourselves, both about ourselves and others. So there was this example of, it's freezing. This training was in January, and the trainer had said, when you are going back home for lunch break, notice what you notice and the stories you tell about what you're noticing. So I'm driving home. I hate winter. I hate the cold. And there's this woman running in, what was it, like 30 degrees. She's running on the running path. And my first story to myself was, wow, she's crazy. Right? I mean, that was my story about her is, okay, she's insane because here she is in freezing cold running. And then because of that training I just had, I said, alternative stories, maybe she's a runner training for a triathlon. Maybe she's a runner and had broken her ankle, and this is the first time in 6 weeks she's been able to run. There are so many alternative stories. Again, perhaps with more compassion. I use the saying Michelle says a lot when somebody cuts me off. I say, maybe because I have an autoimmune disease, it makes me need to go to the restroom randomly. And so I'm like, hey, maybe that person really needs to poop because I know I've been in that situation. So that was such a powerful moment for me to realize what stories we tell both about ourselves and others makes or breaks the quality of our lives. And it is, I was, 41 when I learned that lesson. I'm like, where the heck was this lesson, right? Don't take it personally. Don't make it personal. The story isn't about you. And if I'm going to make a story, I'm going to choose to make it a compassionate one because that's what's in my control, right? Because we all make stories. That's what the mind is. It's the best part of humanity is we are storytellers. But it's also a weapon because if I can choose a story that's self-demeaning or other demeaning, or I can say, hey, maybe she's running free for the first time after a broken ankle. what a tool. I mean, just life changing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank
Yeah.
you, Maya.
storytelling.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. It's the application of these things, when we really think about them and applying, we recognize, we really recognize and can take ownership of the stories that we're telling ourselves, the assumptions that we're making. So Maya, you just very perfectly transitioned us to the next agreement of don't make assumptions, with your story of the assumptions that you were making about the woman who was running, or the assumptions that we make. We believe oftentimes, and unless we check ourselves, we believe these assumptions, and then we form stories based on these assumptions, and before we know it, we're walking around living in this life that we can so clearly say to ourselves, but this is what my reality is, and not really recognizing that this is the choice of what your reality is. Okay, so hold on one second. I'm gonna share my screen again and take us on to don't make assumptions. Okay, all right, so here we are. I have to move things over again. Not making assumptions. Finding the courage to ask questions and express what we really want. As women, I have recognized within the space of my life coaching, within my friendships, how often we have an issue with this. I think human beings can have an issue with this, but women especially, being society has raised us in many ways to, especially as women of color, to not be that angry Black woman, or not be that very assertive Black woman. So you've got a range. You've got passive, you've got assertive, and you've got aggressive. Assertive, right in between, is when you're able to have the courage to ask the questions, to express what you really want, what you really feel. That is not to be confused, although it so frequently is, with being aggressive. Aggressive has a different tone to it. It's overbearing, but assertive is that very good balance between passive and aggressive. You don't have to overtake or dominate someone else to be clear and concise in conveying how you feel or what you need. But when you are clearer with yourself, you're able to more clearly communicate with others what it is that you need in order to be comfortable, in order to be loved, in order to be felt. But having the courage to ask, because when we don't have the courage, what often happens? If you're tracking with me, you think, like, I can think of situations when if I haven't said what I wanted, then the other person does whatever they're going to do. And in my head, I make up a story about why they did that, without recognizing that, wait, I didn't tell them what I wanted. I didn't tell them exactly how I felt, but I'm going to then judge what they did as, well, they did that, so that must mean this, and that must mean that, right? And relating that to what it would mean if you did that. But that's an assumption. It's an assumption unless you've clearly asked them what they feel, unless you've said, hey, how do you feel when you're doing this? Or when you do this, it makes me feel like this. I would rather for you to do this so I can feel this. That's like the foundation of nonviolent communication. So I'm going to say that again, because it really helps within the heat of a moment, and more clearly communicating how you feel without blame. So when you do this, X, it makes me feel that, Y. I'd rather you do this, A, so that I can feel that, B. But recognizing how you want to feel, not just when you do this, you always do this and it means that, and like putting words into someone else's mouths, or making assumptions about why they're doing what they're doing, can just create all of the drama in the world. We can make the story up and live by it, and it may not be grounded in truth. And we don't know that until we stop making assumptions and we ask. So the second point here, just communicating clearly, or communicating with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. There it is. You made me feel this way. And that can be so uncomfortable to say, but unless you really say that, you're not fully giving that other person the opportunity to make you feel a different way. Maybe their intention was good, but it just came off wrong. So we have in positive.
Not to cut you off. I just want to make one point, because I don't want us to conflict. even with someone, when our response is not "you made me feel," right? Because that goes back to agreement number one. No one can make us feel. But to your point, Amber, about being fully self-expressed, we start with "I feel," not "you made me feel." Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to bring that distinction, because we don't want to feel that someone else, and with whatever they said, really causes us, it's the experience I have, I feel a certain way when you do or say something.
Yes, and it is I feel. And so that's a check to me to be impeccable with my word, because how much of a difference does that make? It you
Right.
totally power away just with "you made me feel," without the ownership of I feel.
That's right.
Not because of what you did, but I feel this way, and I would rather feel this way. And making the request, which may not always be honored, but making the request is where the clarity comes, and where the drama can then somewhat not dissipate. Yeah. So the ABCDEs of assumptions. So this quote that I put here is: all the sadness and drama you have lived in your life was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. And if you think about that for a moment, and start to apply that, I hope that you'll start to see patterns there. Our adversities, beliefs, and consequences. A lot of times we worry about things, and worry is really a lot of irrational thoughts put together that build on top of each other. There's an adversity, something that happens that causes us to believe that a consequence could happen. But the D and E, the disputation with evidence, can help us to break down worry by saying, okay, I'm worried that I'm going to, I'm worried that I am going to get fired from my job. So my belief is that because of everything that's going on right now, I could get let go of from my job. The consequences are that, oh my God, that my life, I'm not prepared for that. I don't know if I can sustain that. And so I could sit and get stuck in that downward cycle of narrowing myself into that worry and panic, right? But with that assumption, serve me well, because if I have to dispute that, what is the evidence for that assumption? And then what is the evidence against that? Sometimes it's hard to talk to an irrational mind with rational thoughts, but we have to catch ourselves at a moment of reflection where we can get more rational with our irrational thinking, because we'll start to just go down the rabbit hole and let that worry and build that into a story of an assumption of what could be, and worry so deeply about something that also could not happen. And how does that serve us? It doesn't allow us to live as fully and joyfully as we could. And so although there are a lot of things to worry about that are very, very real, especially these days, this is just a tool that I'm giving you when you are taking offense or when you're worrying, of how you may be able to uncover some of the assumptions that you're making, that you're choosing to think over and over again, that are just wrapping you in sadness and drama, where you could choose to think about other consequences, or look at where what you're calling your facts may just be opinions. Michelle, did you want to comment on that? I saw you a couple of times.
No, I'm taking it in. You're feeding me.
Okay. I'm looking for the chat. And I don't know, can you see if anyone's commenting in the chat, Michelle?
Yeah, no, I've been following the thread, and no, it was just Raynette. Well, I gotta put my glasses on. Is it Raynette? Yeah. She was just speaking about the making people feel. She was appreciative of that distinction. So yeah, I mean, I think we're okay. They're just kind of commenting and a bit of validation on the points.
Okay, great. I think, we've got the quote here. So when you transform your behavior, magic happens in your life. What you need comes to you easily because spirit moves freely through you. So this all just tying into the power that we have to create our reality, to allow and to really live more fully by what we're thinking and saying, and what we're really agreeing to allow as the truths that we live by in our lives. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle, that's you.
Yep. So this is, as we transition to agreement number 4, always do your best. So our best, I remember when my son was in elementary school, he had a really great teacher, and his teacher would always say to the students, good, better, best. Always do your best until your good is better and your better is best. I love that. I love that, right? Because it's, looking to have a standard of excellence in terms of how we want to show up in the world. And yet with this first bullet, our best oftentimes is going to change from moment to moment. How many times, even with the best of intentions, we slip, right? From even a religious perspective, I've learned through spiritual teachings that even the term sin in biblical terms is really just being off the mark, right? So, we're going to have slippages. We're going to do things that we have to sort of self-correct or apologize for, because we are always evolving. So it's being self-aware enough to a point where if we're not doing or being our best, we can regroup and apologize if we need to, circle back around, and then just try it again. Because we're here, this is a classroom, this is life is a curriculum, and we're always being invited to constantly improve. Second bullet, it will be different when you are healthy opposed to when you're sick. Now, we're not necessarily talking about your physical, it could be psychological or even emotional. When we're quote unquote unhealthy in the way that we are being, oftentimes our best may not necessarily look the same. Under any circumstance, simply do your best. That's what we strive for. When we wake up in the morning, I look to practice this to the best of my ability. I don't always get it right. I set an intention. One of the things, even with this, if I knew Don Miguel Ruiz, I would want to alter this, always be your best, because do oftentimes indicates an action where being is just an intention, right? Because being sort of feeds into what we're doing. So oftentimes, as I mentioned, when I wake up in the morning, I just will send a prayer to my higher self saying, Michelle, just be the best. You may not get all the tasks done that you had set out to do. You may not always be this kind, empathetic individual, but just set the intention to be the best you can. And then do some course correction measures if necessary. And when you do these things, you then will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. We have to be permission giving. We're in this classroom called life on this journey to evolve. And the only way that we will do that is when we recognize we're going to fall down, we're going to have shortfalls. We may, in fact, piss people off with what we do. But, again, when we don't tell ourselves a story about what that means to us, it doesn't make us bad people. We can avoid the self-judgment, the self-abuse, the self-regret. We as women, as Amber was making reference to early on, oftentimes have this perfectionistic tendency where we, aim to project to the world, all of these perfections. And oftentimes we hold ourselves, and maybe others hold us to such a high standard that oftentimes is almost impossible for us to maintain, right? So just doing the care and feeding of ourselves, of our souls, we aim to do the best we can or be the best we can, and recognize, again, it's on a moment-to-moment, case-by-case basis. Next slide. I'm looking at the comments. We'll get to them in a minute. So if you want to live a life of joy and fulfillment, you have to find the courage to live these agreements and claim your personal power. Whew, I just take this in, ladies. I love subjects like this. Amber and I love the opportunity to be on these calls because, this is about anchoring us to how powerful we are, and with a higher level of self-awareness about who we want to be, and following these 4 agreements, as well as any of the other irrefutable universal laws that are out there to kind of guide us through this path, we can create a life of our dreams. an absolute life of our dreams. Yeah, yeah. I think that was that, oh, we got one more. So let me pause for a minute. Yeah, we've got some comments that are coming in. Action call. So Anita, let's see what you say here. Mistakes or being off your game. What does it say here? Off your mark, help us transform and grow. Absolutely, right? There's something to be said about, that's why there are erasers on pencils, right? This is how we learn. Oftentimes within society, we are dinged and blamed for making mistakes. But we have to be forgiving to ourselves. We have to stop the story that means anything outside of, oh, okay. I mean, think about inventors and scientists. There's a lot of experiments that quote unquote fail, but with the analysis, with our behaviors, when we're falling short of the mark, so to speak, you know, we're able to course correct. Yeah, Maya, for sure. That's the hard part. Yeah, the action call.
Yeah. We had a comment come in directly to me. So Stephanie, I wanted to invite you to share your comment as well. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can everybody hear me? I have my little earbuds in. Everybody? Yeah,
We
great.
hear you. Mm-hmm.
Listen, I will not be turning on the camera.
No worries. We understand.
We will do this audio. Okay, so what I wanted to share was, these 4 agreements, this is something that I think is lighthearted because Michelle knows I'll find humor in almost anything, and I am a storyteller at heart. So when I was going through the agreements, I thought, you know, I think, ladies, lean in. I'm going to share something with you. I think that I might have a Zoom date. Yes. All right. So with that being said, looking at the 4 agreements, let's walk through them, shall we? Okay. Be impeccable with your word. If the Zoom date is at 7 p.m., turn your camera on at 7 p.m. Okay. All right. Don't take anything personally. Video cameras will be on. We're doing our best. I need to be at the salon. I haven't been at the salon. I'm going to do my own hair. I'm going to do my own makeup. I'll do the best I can. Please be gentle with me. Okay. Agreement number 3, don't make assumptions. Kind of struggling with that one. And then agreement number 4, always do your best. So I find it so wonderful that I'm taking and I'm sharing with this particular Lunch and Learn, and I have this opportunity coming up. So I will be incorporating all of this during the Zoom date. I want everyone to light a candle and send positive energy my way, and let's hope for the best. Thank you so much.
There you go. It's agreement number 4, right? You're just going to be and do the best. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
It.
Yeah, cool.
And a part of us, so that was actually a part of our next question, is that we would like for you to take away from this what things you could be doing differently, or what ways you could be applying these 4 agreements to your life. If something came up for you as we were going through and you had an aha moment, oh my God, I take things personally a lot, or oh my God, I make assumptions a lot. So what is the cue for that, or the trigger for that, and how can you respond differently next time? If you just want to take a couple minutes to, I'll tell you what was on the last screen. These are the top 5 things. These are the top 5 things I know I need some work on. And so what does that, even if it's just one thing, what does that look like for you? We will also just like to just invite someone to share if you want to be more transparent with a aha moment that you may have had. So is there anyone that wants to share a realization that you had as we went through the 4 agreements? Fear of failure. Yeah.
So we'll wait for other comments to come in, and this takeaway, we're inviting you as coaches, we're inviting you to identify the 5 things that you now know and look to work towards them with the epiphanies, the aha that you got from, you know, either being represenced or seeing the 4 agreements for the first time. It's with what you know now, what is it that you want to do differently? Set that intention. And yeah, Maya, we can all relate to, the concern that we have about perceived failure, because when we question the validity, is there really a such thing as a failure? Not really, right? It's a belief that we have that it means something, but it's worth our while to take a look and examine what failure, quote unquote, has been interpreted, have we interpreted, but kind of figure out and go, wait a minute, there's something that I've learned from whatever that breakdown, misstep was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have a comment from Susan. Susan, I want to invite you to speak on your comment if you like. And Raynette, I saw you raise your hand, so let me know if that was a mistake or if you want to make a comment too before we close out. So Susan says, not impeccable with the words to myself. My intentions have not been aligned with my words and actions. Susan, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I think everything from, I know that one of my coaches, Sylvia High, always says there are no throwaway words. Mm-hmm. So if you say something like, oh, anything that's negative at all, actually just kind of toss it out there in the air. It's kind of like, I hate to say it like this virus, like it's there, it lingers, it really is there. And there's no such thing as a throwaway phrase. So if I say something to myself that's negative, and at the same time, like for instance, if I say that I want to lose 10 pounds, but I don't do what I know to do, then my intention is really not to lose 10 pounds. It isn't, and so I'm pretty much like not being impeccable with, to myself. So my words are like basically not adding up to really what my intention is. Same thing for work. Same thing for, it's funny, interesting that I really meet deadlines and I really, try to work hard with my clients, but where it comes to my own product, I just tend to actually not be as impeccable to myself as I do with others. So this is definitely, Four Agreements is definitely one of my favorite books. I've had it in my library for at least 15 years, and I'm glad I was able to dust it off, and I got to read that again. In fact, I have the audiobook now too. So yeah. Thank you.
For sharing that, Susan. Thank you. Yeah, and actually, speaking of the book, did anyone invite a friend and enter the contest for the little mini Four Agreements book? Okay, so since no one did, I'm still going to choose someone. I will literally put numbers on you and a hat, and based on your numbers of signing up, you get an email. Someone's going to get this little book. You can let me know if you have it already, or if you want it as a gift that you can share with someone. So this was for the contest that we did. We were trying to incentivize you to bring friends. So Michelle, it's 1:29, and so I guess we'll share a bit about what we have coming. But just thank you for your participation, everyone. And we had a good time switching it up this week and doing something that wasn't as professionally focused as we always are. And we're going to do the same thing for next week. We have a discussion about creating balance in our lives, physically and mentally. And so we actually, Anne says, loved it. Thank you, Anne. So Anne is a dear, dear friend of ours and a part of our WBA group. So we're glad to see her with us. We have next week an opportunity for us to spend about a half hour doing yoga after our discussion. So the summertime is coming. We're looking at getting ourselves in shape mentally and physically to get back outside. So we'll talk about balance. Come in comfortable clothes. You can turn your camera on or off, but we have one of our dear friends who's joined us many times on this call. She's going to lead us in a yoga session next week. So that'll be about the second half hour of our time together. Michelle, do you want to close us out? I just wanted to make mention of that.
Yeah. So here's what I want to say. It's the coach in us, right? So, we're getting comments in the chat that you guys got a lot from today's conversation, and we want to encourage and invite you to continue it. So with whatever your answer was on the poll, where you were addressing from 0 to 5, where you would rank yourself in terms of complying to the agreements, we're inviting you to think about what a 5 would look like in all of those categories, because that is where you really begin to strengthen that muscle to get you I'm going to call it optimal in practicing, the 4 agreements to the best of your ability. So, if you're so inclined, do that practice for yourself and create that intention after you've identified what a 5 would look like. Yeah, that was basically, all that I wanted to say. It's wonderful seeing your faces week after week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And we have updated the schedule. When you go to register for next week, you'll see that you can see all of June. So you'll see the other topics that we're covering. And we just want to let you know, we have a really great opportunity coming up for you guys. So stay tuned on your emails from us. We're going to be offering something to our guests and our friends, our community who are looking to either start or grow your business. We have some further support and some announcements that we'll make. So stay tuned. And as we mentioned, we do this as a labor of love. We always appreciate the donations. We got a few more that came in this week. And thank you, thank you, thank you. It always warms our hearts when you decide to give to us, even though you do not have to. We always appreciate it. So you can see all of the replays of the past weeks and donate on the same page. You'll find it on my website or on Michelle's website, but we have a bit.ly link that I'll put in the chat.
And one other thing I'll add while you incorporate the link, ongoingly, we're going, in addition to having a repository of our recorded sessions on our respective websites, we'll also be sending out a newsletter with all of the recordings on them as well. So we're going to try not to overwhelm you with, too many emails, but with any of you who may be missing some of them, we want to make sure that, you're kept up to speed. And we also welcome you to share it with those that friends, family, colleagues, coworkers, bosses, you name it. Because this is worthwhile stuff and we want to keep spreading the word and helping as many people as we possibly can. Yeah, Amber just incorporated the link where you can watch the recording.
Yes, yes. So with that said, thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week. Come with your yoga gear or your comfortable gear on. It'll be a good time of some conversation and some activity together. Teresa says, thank you. You always enjoy our sessions. Thank you, Teresa. We're glad that you continue to join us. And to all of you, thank you for joining us. Peace out. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.